Hello, so let's talk about repository descriptions, possibly the most misunderstood thing on GitHub. And I want to show you, or begin by showing you, a couple of terrible examples for you, depending on what you're doing. But I'll show you a couple of bad examples, explain why they're bad, and then talk about how we can actually do this the correct way. If you want to stand out in the market in terms of people reading your profile like recruiters or employers. So, a bad example. I am always a bad example. So here we go, right? I have one repository here for the Crushing Digital website. If you haven't been there, you should go there. It's a lovely place. Anyway, so, and in fact, this is an old version of the site. It's not even relevant. But here's my repository. Now, if I'm applying for I should change this back because I did this as a bad example last time. If I apply for a Vue developer job, hopefully this says Vue when I get through to here, not React and Redux. But my one pinned repository, hopefully I have more, but this one pinned repository says Vue. Boom. Do I have any experience now with TypeScript? There could be other repositories to supplement this. But what do I put in the description? Crushing Digital website. This does not help. And if we want to go and look at this repository and change this, it's going into this section here, about, and change the description. That's what I'm talking about in this instance. Right. So now we know we've got 2 or 3 lines here for each of our repositories where we've got space to enter a description. And what I've put is of no help to anybody. It just says Crushing Digital website, which is better than some because quite a lot of developers don't put any description whatsoever. So at least it tells you what it is, but it's of no value to me as a reader. All I know is David did his website in Vue. So that's a bad example. It doesn't help your story if you're trying to convey something. So let's look at another bad example from a great developer. Here's Evan Yu, the creator of Vue.js. So for these repositories, he's written the description about what the repository does. Now, those of you who are more fast thinking than I are already ahead of me thinking, isn't that what you should do? That's the best practice to write what the repository does. Yes, it is, if your repository is going to be used by other people. It might be other people in the development team, it might be the public, in which case it's really important that people know what it does and that sort of thing. So Evan's doing a fantastic job for him and for Vue.js with those descriptions. But if you're applying for a job and maybe you're applying to be a Vue.js developer and they're thinking, well, do you have experience with Vue? Do you have experience with TypeScript? Do you have experience with all of the supporting technologies, testing libraries, all those kind of extra complementary skills? Now, there might be a whole heap of libraries used within these projects that, would help you if you were applying for a job. So you do have experience with all of these tools. If you've written a React repository, does it use TypeScript? Does it use Jest? Is it built with Next.js, etc., etc.? So for you, the developer, trying to stand out in this market, if you're trying to leverage recruiters, or if you're hoping employers are going to look and see that you're the right person, they might go, oh, Vite and Vue powered static site generator. How does that help you? Now, obviously, having thousands of stars will help, and people forking the repository, sure. I'm guessing that's not going to be the situation you're in. If you are, you probably don't need my help. So what we should be using this space for is to indicate what technology is used within that project. And this is where I want to encourage you to put the value to the reader first. So it's less about what your Netflix clone does, because nobody cares, and it's just a trivial project. I'm not saying you're all doing Netflix clones, but standard basic projects as you're going through your coding bootcamp, as you're learning a new technology. No one really cares about your repository that helps you monitor and track your record collection. it's not that important. It's not that impressive to a recruiter. But if the first few lines said, this is my React repository using Redux, Jest, etc., etc., those first 3 lines confirm all the technologies, where we were using the pinned repositories to go, I can see you've used TypeScript here, 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 and here. I then might be able to say I can see Next.js used here, 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 and here. I can see some testing library used in all these repositories. Now I'm getting more and more confident, not just about the language or the framework that you're using, but all these extra libraries. There's evidence of you using them, even without me having to click to go anywhere. I don't need to read your package JSON. I don't need to ask you a question. I can see that you've been living and breathing it all the way through. And then when you take that a little bit further and go and look at someone's repository list to think, okay, when did you start using that technology? Are you currently using that technology? And how frequently can I see it? If you've been placing the descriptions all the way through all of your repositories, that recruiter can become very confident about a number of the skills on that job description very quickly without them having to click and go anywhere. And that's where we can really leverage the power of GitHub by communicating in a way that's palatable and consumable for a non-technical person, so a recruiter can see and tick off all those skills on that job list without having to click into code and worry about how to find these things. They can see it on the surface, it's clearly represented, and they feel really confident about putting you forward and saying, I think I've found a developer that matches this job. Hope that makes sense. I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.